Welcome to SEFAA Soundbites, your quick 15-minute pulse on all things multifamily, brought to you by the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. The Southeast Florida Apartment Association podcast and the views and information shared in this episode are provided solely for general guidance, informational, and educational purposes only, primarily for professionals in the multifamily housing industry. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Southeast Florida Apartment Association. This podcast does not constitute legal, financial, or operational advice. Listeners should follow their own company's policies and standard operating procedures, and, when needed, seek professional counsel before acting on any topic discussed. In today's inaugural episode, we're diving into a critically important topic for our region: hurricane preparedness in multifamily communities. As property managers and housing professionals in South Florida, we know that hurricane season isn't just a time of heightened awareness, it's a time for action. From safeguarding residents to protecting property, preparation is everything. In this episode, we'll cover the key steps communities should take before, during, and after a storm. Whether you're creating your first emergency plan or updating a well-seasoned one, these practical tips and insights will help keep your residents safe and your operations running smoothly. So grab your coffee, plug in, and let's get prepared. This is SEFAA Soundbites.
Welcome to the first episode of our podcast series called SEFAA Soundbites. My name is Alicia Rice. I'm the Area Vice President with AMLI Residential. Today with me, I have Seoane with First Onsite and Ozzie Ochoa with Highmark Residential, talking all things hurricane preparedness. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
For sure. How are you?
Good.
Yeah? Excited?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Our first topic is hurricane preparedness, because hurricane season is fully here and we couldn't think of two better guests to have with us. So to kick it off, everyone loves a good hurricane story. So please tell us a hurricane horror story. Ozzie, you?
Well, I was born and raised in Florida. I was born and raised in Miami, so I've been through a lot of hurricanes. And I went through Hurricane Andrew. So I remember, so my horror story was when I was, I guess Andrew was like 12 years old, something like that. I remember my parents holding the door and just not, so it won't, open up, and we get all destroyed. And I would hear the tiles rolling down the roof and smashing on the floor. And it was kind of scary at the moment, but thanks to that, we improved our building codes. We're actually more prepared, I think, nowadays than we've ever been. So, with every with every bad comes the good. So,
that's crazy. When it comes down to response time after hurricanes, I'm not from South Florida, and when I went through a first hurricane or prep for a hurricane, that's definitely one of the things that everyone wants to pay attention to. So what do you actually think typical response time is from First Onsite or just vendors in general?
Typical response time would vary.
Yeah.
I mean, it really varies on the situation, the severity of it. Usually the ETA is about 4 hours, I would say. If it's a little bit more than that, it's not, it's kind of something that we can't really control. For example, they have streets blocked out, anything like that. But usually we like to say about 4 hours.
Okay, well, those are some great stories, and thank you for kicking us off there. So let's talk about more storm prep. So what are your top 3 must-have things on your checklist when you are going through hurricane season and it's approaching for teams?
Okay, so we usually, at the beginning of the season, we usually send out an email getting our teams ready for that. There's a lot of prep work that needs to be done on properties.
Absolutely.
So, for example, tree trimming, cleaning out your storm drains, making sure that that's working properly.
Yeah.
And then there is a list of stuff that we should have. Like, all our properties typically have a portable generator.
Yes.
In case there's a power outage. And then, stuff like first aid kit, battery powered radios, flashlights, anything that they need for communication, can openers, trash bags, stuff like that. And then, of course, proactively, we do have vendors that we engage with, and that they're regular vendors of ours, and we have them on standby in case we need. So, for example, like a landscape company that comes in and clears out trees.
Yes.
Any restoration company in case we get water intrusion, we need water extraction. Roofers to repair roofs, electricians in case there's any electrical issue or plumbing issue. I actually had a situation a few years back, I think with Hurricane Irma, where a tree collapsed in one of our properties and it was right next to the building. And when the roots came up, they tore out all the plumbing for the building. So the plumbing had no drainage, had no water. So that was one of those, like, get there quick. We got to get that resolved. Yeah. So as far as the response time, what he was saying, I mean, it depends on the severity of the issues, right? And if residents are blocked into the property. So there's a lot of factors that you got to consider when going into this.
Right.
So, I mean, with us, the main thing that we gotta do is when we're planning ahead, we usually like to have like a list of all the contact information that we have with vendors, whether it's your like he was saying, whether it's your elevator company, your sprinkler company, or HVAC company, whoever it is, have that already ahead set aside. You know, it's pretty much exactly what Ozzie just said. Outside of that.
Yeah, you both hit some key things there. I always tell my team members when we are so busy prepping the properties for hurricane season, I also say make sure you guys are prepping yourselves and the teams are prepping, you know, their families, because I think we oftentimes forget that when we're in the business. So make sure you're prepping your home so we don't have to like worry about that, you know, water, shutters if you need that, gas for the generators you mentioned, but making sure that we're doing those things. And then also when it comes down to vendors, making sure like emergency contact lists are up to date, which is the key thing so that we can stay in communication if something does happen. And then also just making sure that we do have those vendor numbers. And then always first Onsite's amazing, but having a 1 or 2 and a 3, because there has been situations where a hurricane does happen, right? Or any sort of just water that comes with it. We might not actually get hit by a hurricane, but then you get floods of calls from vendors who maybe are not qualified. And that's a thing, and that becomes a headache too. So just making sure that you do set yourselves up for success at the workplace. I know this is a really big deal.
And it's also good to nail down pricing sometimes if you can.
Yeah.
I've had situations where we would have, you know, companies give us pricing ahead of time. Some of them want us to sign off on things and, you know, sign off on agreements.
Yes.
Or something like that. We try to stay away from that, but that's something that's available out there as well.
Okay. All right. So question for you both, timing wise, is it ever too early to start prepping for hurricane season?
No, I feel like you're preparing year round. I mean, there's certain things you want to do at certain times of the year. So definitely right before rainy season or hurricane season, you want to start doing your storm drain cleaning. You want to do your tree trimming. You want to double check your roofs. I mean, that's something you got to keep up all year. Just make sure your roofs are up to par.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, anything that you see. So like there's properties that might be more prone to flooding. So those are the ones you really want to make sure you have maybe pumps or something to kind of help you with that situation if it does occur. So you kind of got to know your property a bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about post-hurricane, if it ever happens. How do you assess damage and how do you initiate recovery? Let's start with you, Ozzie, and then we'll get into guys.
So typically, we just try to see who's the closest associate to the property to get eyes on the property as soon as the storm clears, and obviously if they're safe and they're good, we kind of prioritize their safety first. But after that, you know, we try to get somebody out there to kind of assess the damage, send some photos, trying to get, you know, things mobilized. So whether it's down trees or flooding or whatever it is that's happening at the property, we just want to make sure that that we're aware of it, we know it, and then we mobilize our vendors to help us out with that if needed. That's basically it. Like, I mean, we try to get there as soon as possible, as soon as the storm clears. Yeah. Sometimes it happens in the afternoon, so you can't get there till the next morning. So there's a lot of that. It depends how the storm ends up actually hitting.
And that's pretty much the same thing how we would go about it. One of the things that we like telling everybody is after one of these natural disasters do happen, about 40% of small businesses after that event happens, shut down completely. And then out of those, 25% of that within like the first year, they close down as well, if they're not prepared for this.
Wow.
So and then after that, there's about, I think it's either 70 or 75% within the next 3 years that will probably shut down as well because they're not planned ahead of time. So yeah, it's definitely hard. It's definitely something that you want to do before so that none of this stuff that happens after occurs to you.
Yeah.
It's a good initiative to have.
Moral of the story is So, Ozzie, from a resident standpoint, how do you suggest communication go within your residents and also to your team? Tell me what you guys typically do?
We usually send like an email blast to all the residents, let them know, hey guys, we heard about a hurricane that's on the way. You want to be prepared. We give them a list of, emergency contacts and any, government sources so they could get up to date and know what the status of the hurricane is. We also, give them tips and tricks to, to what they need to have on board with them and what to do and where to go in case of emergencies. I mean, if there's a hurricane that's headed straight to the property, know where your shelters are.
Right.
In case, for some properties that don't have shutters or are not very well equipped for hurricanes, that might be an option for some residents. Or if some that are not really comfortable with hurricanes, they might feel safer going to a shelter.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is key. I know we also make sure that someone, probably not in Florida typically, but someone most likely in our Chicago corporate office, they're sending out that cadence of emails to residents when there is a warning, when, it's an actual hurricane, all the things. And key pieces, a lot of times in that communication is removing things from their balconies because people don't think about that.
Yes.
Locking down whole furniture or storing it inside so that nothing, becomes a projectile, even if it's not an actual hurricane, but like the heavy rains and the winds, things just kind of get blown away, and we want to eliminate some of that. So those are some key things. Isaac, when it comes to you all with, communication with your property managers, I know we touched base a little bit on that, but is there anything else that you guys suggest to the residents or to the property managers that are keeping?
Pretty much. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, our CRM system is pretty good with sending out those blast emails as well.
Yeah.
To let them know exactly what they have to be doing.
All right, Jonathan. So if listeners could implement one thing right now, today, what would you suggest it be?
Well, I definitely suggest that, the property staff gets to know their property, knows what their strengths and weaknesses are. They do your property inspections, make sure you're familiar with your company's policies and procedures, and do your generator inspections, your elevator inspections, make sure all your emergency lights are working, make sure all your vendors are up to date and all the proper insurance is already, settled. And also make sure you have vendors on standby for the hurricane. You definitely want to be prepared early, so you can't start prepping too early. It's a year-round thing here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of what Ozzie just said, one of the great things that you can do with us is prior to any of this happening, just have us go in a walkthrough with you so we can see all the exits, get the actual square footage of your building, see the stuff that we don't see from just standing outside.
Yeah.
So it's a quicker access to get in there. That would really help out a lot. It would expedite things quite a bit. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that part. Everything else Ozzie said sounded great.
I love that. Don't wait and ask the questions if you don't know.
Right.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for sitting in with us and, being a sounding board for our listeners to prep them for this season. And I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. And please don't forget to join on the SEFAA website where you can go to the resource tab to learn all things that you need in regards to hurricane preparedness, to look at all the checklists that you need. And if you need anything, don't ever hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
That wraps up the first ever episode of SEFAA Soundbites. Thank you for joining us. A big thank you to our host and guests for sharing those timely insights on hurricane preparedness for multifamily communities. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to follow or subscribe to SEFAA Soundbites on Spotify or YouTube so you never miss a quick industry update or expert conversation. We'd also love to hear from you. Leave us a review or share this episode with a colleague who might benefit from the tips we discussed today. For more resources, upcoming events, and member tools shared in this episode, visit our website and follow us on our socials, tagged in the description. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and keep building stronger communities. This is SEFAA Soundbites.